In these times of uncertainty, it's all the more important that we keep collaborating, informing, and inspiring each other, so that we can be smarter and better tomorrow. Welcome to the Pakhuis de Zwijger livecast.
Good evening and a very warm welcome to you from Pakhuis de Zwijger. Well, we've started 2021, not with the usual bang, but all in the comforts of our own home. We're still dealing with the aftermath of 2020 and the corona crisis still is not over. We're experiencing a second lockdown and we're about to experience an extension of that lockdown. But still, we think it's important to come together to organize these meetings like WeMakeThe.City Reset, because it's important to inspire each other. Because in times as these, it's creatives, it's philosophers, it's scientists, it's creators and designers who can visualize new scenarios and develop new insights for our future. And our main guest is absolutely able to do that as well. I'd like to welcome Lonneke Gordijn. Nice to see you.
Hello, nice to see you.
And welcome in our studio, still not with audiences, what we're used to, because we've done programs together before, and usually the room was packed with people, and now it's only the two of us and the people at home. Unfortunately, yeah. For the people who do not know you, I'll give a short introduction. Lonneke, you are an artist, and in 2007 you founded Studio Drift together with Ralph Nauta. And with spectacular installations, Studio Drift shows the interface between humans, natural phenomena, and technology. And what we would like to know tonight is, where do you get your inspiration from? Can you tell us a little bit about that? What inspires you when you create work?
I think, well, it always sounds so very boring and very standard when I say my inspiration comes from nature, because it sounds very vague. But what I really like to see is, when you look, for instance, at flowers or at a tree, that you see habits of that plant, of that organism, that you can recognize from yourself. And that is very strange. When you start to recognize yourself in something that you don't feel immediately related to, then my fantasy starts to go, and I start to see all sorts of patterns and symbiosis, and yeah, that is usually the starting point.
Great.
Yeah.
We'll talk a little bit more about the patterns and the symbiosis, hopefully. We've all been hit by the corona crisis in one way or another. How did it affect you as an artist?
Very strange, because I think I'm going through all these different phases. I think we all are, and in the beginning I was kind of a little bit secretively, I had the feeling like, oh, I really needed this, because I was very tired and we were traveling all over the place all the time. And I think in the beginning I was kind of like, oh, this is good. And then you have to find ways to also make sense of yourself if the platforms that you're used to perform are not there anymore, or not so much. So I think it's a time of reinventing yourself. Also seeing that you're exactly the same as everyone else. Very confronting. But
how do you see that you're exactly the same?
I see that I react the same as everyone else. I see my needs are changing like everyone else. Yeah, I really truly don't think I'm the only one who feels right now a little bit like unmotivated, and everything starts to feel a little bit too much. I think a lot of people have it. I also feel it around me. Maybe I'm sensitive for it, and I'm looking for that. Yeah. But
it's also the second time around. I mean, the second lockdown, the first one, we were about to get over it to survive. But now the second lockdown, we know what we're getting ourselves into, and that feels a little bit demotivating.
And also that we don't know how long it's going to last, and maybe this is going to last way longer than we think. There's so many uncertainties. I think we have to learn to deal with those.
But it's one thing to deal with that as a person, as an artist as well, but you have got a company. I believe that you've got 40 people working for you.
Yeah.
And how is that, how does that responsibility weigh on you in imagining the future, but also dealing with the present?
Yeah, I feel quite stressed about it, honestly. Yeah, I cannot, you are responsible for everything, to keep everything running, to keep on reinventing yourself, find new ways. push a little harder. I also feel supported by my team. The team also really feels as a family, and the few people that we see each other in the studio because we make, so we also have to be there. We share the space and are careful with each other. So it's also very nice to be able to change environment and see other people and also exchange different points of view. So I think it's besides the responsibility, it's also really nice to have this group of people in your work together towards something, and you find your way together.
Right. You mentioned that there was this first sigh of relief almost when, you could plug out, in the aftermath, and now we've seen that it's very complex and we have to deal with a lot. Is there anything positive that the corona crisis gives you?
Oh, a lot. I think a lot of positive things. Personally, I never had so much, let's say, I wouldn't say time. It doesn't feel that I have a lot of time, but insights and stability somehow. My life was very irregular. And many jet lags, many places, lots of inspiration as well. I also see that it really helps to keep the things flowing. But it was also exhausting, and it also brings you further away from yourself. And I see now that we were very influenced by constant stimuli from outside, that someone's saying this, yes, we're going to do that. And we're constantly following, not per se always the path you really choose, because you are influenced. And now I see that influence is kind of gone, and you can really choose, and you have to choose also. Yeah. And I think that is very good. I think this counts for everyone. And this puts yourself on the spot. If you don't make the change that you always wanted to make now, when is that moment going to do it? Yeah,
right.
Exactly.
We're almost at the end of this first part of a conversation. But what I really wonder, if in a global scale you see that there's this sense of momentum, this crisis made us realize that there are several problems and systems that does not work. Can we use, as a people or as a humanity, can we use this momentum to really structurally change society? Do you believe that we're able to do that now?
I think we have already started it, but I think this is a slow process, and I wish we could just turn it over in one night, but I don't believe that is going to happen. I think we have a very long time ahead of us to let go and change our perspective, because we need to change that perspective to accept a new reality. But I do think there are positive things in that, and yes, I do think this is only the start of a lot of changes.
Right. We will continue our conversation later, but first we would like to see your presentation, because you prepared a presentation for us for now. So if I could invite you to take your place in front of the screen, then I'll introduce your presentation. Like I said, from now on, that's the theme that we gave Lonneke in preparing her presentation. And the title she gave her presentation is, From Now On, We Need to Focus on How to Use Technology to Re-establish Our Connection to Earth. I gladly give the floor to Lonneke Gordijn.
So I'm going to start with a little bit of repetition and refresh of what happened last year. And it's not that I don't believe the people that are watching this don't know this, but I think some things you cannot say many times enough. 2020, we're just past it, has been a drastic point of change in the history of our planet. And it's not because of our pandemic. In 2020, the global human-made mass exceeded all living biomass. This is a drastic change in our history. This means that on our planet, 900 gigaton is made by trees and shrubs, compared to 1,100 gigatons of buildings and infrastructure. 4 gigaton living biomass, so animals, towards 8 gigaton of human-made mass versus plastic. Well, that is really something to stand still with and to think about. If you look at the graphs, and this was published in Nature in early December 2020, you see that after the Second World War, we start to accelerate. And the biggest change is in concrete and in our built environment. That has the biggest impact on the environment and on the biomass or the not biomass, the man-made mass that we produce. And especially in the last 20 years, everything has doubled that we use. So there is a complete disbalance, and it's very recent that this disbalance is in our face and has exceeded well, everything that is natural on this planet. And the strange thing is, why do we not react to this? We are part of the natural system. We should instinctively see that this is not right. And why are we the only species, living species on this planet, that don't recognize that our environment is essential for our survival? It's very strange. I think it is because our environment doesn't deliver us this stimulus anymore. We have built our environment, like this is, of course, Manhattan, in squares. And a square is something very efficient. It's something that only exists in the mind of humans. In a square space, like I'm also sitting in a square space right now, you can oversee each corner. You know exactly what is where, you know what is straight. It gives you a sense of control. Also, our natural landscape that we consider outside of the cities are very completely controlled. We know exactly what grows where, which part of the year we divide it to be the most efficient in producing our food. But complete control. And then in our cities, there is nothing that shows us the moment of the seasons or anything that tells us actually what this world is about. We've created a complete, well, man-made world. And what we want, of course, and what maybe distinguishes us from animals and other living organisms, is that we were able to control and create our world. In our illusion, maybe, in our vision, the world that we live in, we can completely create. We have control. And it also gives us the feeling in our lives that if something doesn't go according to plan, we're doing something wrong because we had planned it, it was supposed to happen. This sense of control that we are able to do anything that we want, and if we don't, we are bad or we're not succeeding, is a very strange thing that only happens in the mind of humans. If you take a walk in the forest, you might look around you and you see trees and you see, well, the beauty of the environment around you. But maybe at a certain point you pops in your mind, oh, tonight I'm gonna eat cauliflower, and oh, if I'm quick, I can still go to the supermarket, and maybe I pop by that other shop so I can have some. Something else for tonight. You know, we plan everything and then we take the left at the big tree and we get out of the forest and continue our lives. The moment in the forest is more a moment of recreation. But if you would be an animal, you cannot plan, you cannot decide what's in front of you. You constantly have to adapt to your environment. And animals are adaptive. That is their life. They have not the security. They cannot plan. They don't know what's going to happen. And we actually still have those senses that we can completely tune in with our environment. For instance, the weaving grass here on the background. It's something very simple, but it gives you the feeling of being part of something bigger because it's always moving and ongoing. Or looking at clouds that are constantly changing. It's ever interesting. We need somehow to see the change around us to make us feel alive. And it's also calming us. If I'm just in my room, in my house, doing my Zoom meetings every day, you know, at a certain point I'm going crazy. I'm just walking around like crazy with my phone. I need to go outside. Because nothing moves around me. So I'm drastically looking for something that moves. I constantly look outside, what the sky is about, to the tree in front of my house that doesn't have leaves at the moment. And I'm looking for stimulus. Well, what is more easy to find stimulus in your phone or in anything that somehow moves, and that is usually on our screens. Why do we not feel? I think we have created environments that we cannot feel in. It's created completely the control, and it makes us feel nothing. So also no stress. That is nice. But it also shuts down many systems that actually give us information and what will make us react to an environment. A while ago, we created a floating block of concrete with our studio. And normally, if you would see a block of concrete, you would not even react to it. It's the same as you don't react to your environment. But the funny thing was that we made this concrete block float and move. And by looking at it and really animated it in a way that it moves in a specific way, I started to feel a relationship with this block. I started to feel friendship with this block of concrete. And this was something so strange. I never happened to me before that a dead object that normally I wouldn't even look at in my environment would create such a strong feeling of friendship. I think in the course of the last 15 years, in the work that we make, we have been researching what movement and changing environments do to us. And I realized only, I think in this pandemic, that the works that we create are the situations that we're longing for. It is really intensively how we want to be, not what we are, not how we live our lives, but what we need to feel. We need to create systems that constantly move and constantly change and give us information and make us be aware and make us feel again. We are in need for constant change. Change is new information, it's input, it's other people, it's our growth, it's our development. Our expression in our development is also development of new technologies. It's part of who we are. We need to change. And if we build an environment that doesn't change, we need to change even harder. I think there is a strange thing happening to us because we don't feel connection. We don't react to our environment. And what happens if you feel related to something? You take care of it. If your mother, for instance, was a chicken, you wouldn't eat her, of course. And you definitely wouldn't even think about keeping her in a place where she doesn't even have some private space or can see the daylight. And if your father was a tree, again, something very strange, you would not deal with him in this way if you don't agree on something. And you would definitely not kill all his relatives. It sounds very dramatic, this, but how come that we do feel related? We do not feel related to our environment. This is completely harmful. So the connection and to feel that connection is a key. And I think what is important is how do we build those connections? How do we get back to a situation that we actually react to our environment? How does our environment influence us that we actually are connected to our feelings? And when we are connected to our feelings, our intuition makes sense. If we're stressed out, if we feel nothing, or we feel all sort of strange things, our feelings don't make sense. We cannot rely on them. But if we're very, in the moment and breathing even in the same frequency as our environment, it means that we can actually build on our intuition. And in our intuition, like any other living species, we can trust that direction and we know what to do. We don't know maybe in 5 years or in 3 months what's ahead of us, but we do know what is wrong and what is right. So in our studio, we've been experimenting with building environments or adding moving elements to environments to make you feel that connection again and make you feel that you can actually adapt to the frequencies of movement around you. And we use frequencies from nature. And also we notice the constant need for change because nothing in our life is something that doesn't change. So why do we want to have the control? Why can't we accept that we are part of this change? I think it's a realization that we have tried to block out for a long time, but we are now put this year in the spot and see that we can do nothing more than react to constant changes. What is, I think, an interesting thing is that we are out of well, we feel out of control. We feel we have no clue what's going to happen. It makes us maybe depressed, or maybe we don't know what to do anymore. How can we find the way? How do we know what is right? What if we can connect to our feeling? What if we do trust our intuition? How do we move forward from here? I think the best way to look at those things is actually, I look at these things in this way, is how nature does it. In our city here in Amsterdam, we have lots of elm trees. And every spring in May, the city is flooded with bushes full of floating seeds. And for years, Ralph, my partner in Drift, and me, wanted to do a project with this. We were fascinated by it. We loved how that moved. And when we started to become really involved, we started to ask ourselves the questions. How come that all those seeds fall in the water? How come that they don't land on the place where they need to go? Why don't they have a will of themselves, a will of going somewhere? And is it actually effective to be just blown by the wind and just land somewhere and hope that you will survive? And it also made me realize that if those seeds had the choice and they could only go to the best place, they would all go to the best place and all the other places would be empty. But also it means, like, if you only create the perfect circumstances around you that you want in that moment, it means you will never change yourself, because that tree needs to adapt to its environment. Those seeds need to survive and find new ways. And many of those will not survive. But some of them will, and they will be better and will be stronger. And this is also something that happens to us. If we create somehow the perfect circumstances around us in our environment, it makes that we don't need to change anymore. We don't need to move. And that is exactly what we're doing right now. We're talking a lot about what we should do, but we're not moving. We're not doing anything. If you look at how animals make decisions, animals also don't know where to go. They have no clue. They don't know what's in front of them. They cannot plan. But they look at each other and they make patterns. And the more of their species do the same thing, the more enthusiastic they get, and they go all along in a certain pattern, and they find their way by trying things out. It's exactly our process of development of technology, of new ideas. You have an idea, you try it out. Many of them fail, but you try again and again and again. It's not a failure. It doesn't mean you have to have a trauma. You cannot do anything anymore in your life. Trial and error is part of our life. It's part of who we are. We shouldn't be afraid of it. But if we don't try anything, nothing happens. Quite an interesting example is that we use this swarming behavior of starlings, and we made a performance with drones, and we wanted the drones to swarm exactly like those starlings. We created an algorithm, and in this algorithm were 60 parameters that would define the swarm behavior. And I remember in the time that we were developing this algorithm, already after the change of 3 parameters of this algorithm, I couldn't already figure out anymore what would happen and what would change. It had become so extremely complex that I couldn't relate to it anymore. The only thing I could relate to was the visual outcome, and if it would have an emotional reference to me, and it would give me the stimulus to actually feel that connection or not. I think this brought me really to the idea that technology development, where we are heading at the moment, becomes so complex that we cannot feel emotional connections to it anymore. And the point of this story is that I truly believe that we should use technology not for the sake of technology, for the means to prove that we humans are an incredible race and or species, and we can be better than others. But we should truly use this to become better humans, to become superhumans maybe, and to be connected to our feelings, to be able to connect to the environment, and to find solutions that we are maybe too stupid to find. I truly believe that we have the capability to accelerate with technology the processes that we accelerated already with technology, but in the direction that actually benefits humanity. We have to reconnect to the earth, and technology can help us with that. Thank you very much. That was my presentation.
Thank you so much, Lonneke. We will continue our conversation here, so if you could join us, that would be nice. And in the meantime, I can announce that we will continue also this conversation with the guest that you've invited, Lonneke, and that's Koert van Mensvoort. Koert is an artist, he's a philosopher, and he's best known for his work on the philosophical concept of next nature. We will talk with him in a moment. Thank you so much. It's interesting that what you showed us. It's interesting that you emphasize that we should fail and that we should let go of certain patterns. But humans are a species of habit. So letting go of patterns, we saw that in the past months, is really difficult. The idea that we don't have a perspective when things are going to go back to normal, that's very frustrating for a lot of people. How can we now embrace that change and get rid of the need of returning to what we know and to return to our new patterns, but adapt new patterns? How should we go about that?
I think we're currently in the state of frustration because we cannot continue our old habits. And yes, it's frustrating. And yes, we are people that want our habits, but we actually can also change and adapt quite quickly. I already saw in my own studio that in the beginning we had arrows on the floor and we were pointing each other in the right direction, and this part goes around this side on the table so that we would always stay 1.5 meters from each other. And constantly we had to remind each other to it because it was not in our system. Now, also in the supermarket, everyone walks around each other automatically, also with a little bit more calms. We all take a little bit more time to do shopping. We take care of each other. We have already changed. Yeah. It goes slowly. It is frustrating, but I think we cannot live with frustration, so we have to solve it. So there has to become a moment, and for some people it has already come, for other people it will come, that you make a decision that you're not going to be dependent on this, but you're going to find a way that works for you at this moment.
Right.
And that makes us adapt.
And in that sense, I wonder as well that how you can use technology in order to do that, because the structure that we have right now is that big tech companies decide what we can do with technology. And that means that they facilitate forms like, using online meetings like Zoom, that you are stuck behind your computer. Is that a step in the right direction, or isn't it?
I think it's not.
Why not?
It's funny because I was on a tech conference in San Francisco about 1.5 years ago, and this was a CEO meeting of a venture capitalist where all his investments and all his CEOs of startups were there to get inspiration. And what I found really striking was that every time there was a very inspirational talk, the CEOs were not so interested, but every time there was a talk about how to grow your business, they were very interested. So I think there is a problem in the intention of development of technology. Right now, people want to succeed because of their personal path. Of course, people want to succeed, they want to grow, they want to develop themselves, but it has a cost. And I think that development has to lay in something else, not only to grow as quick as possible a tech company and to make people addictive to it as quickly as possible. I think with the right intentions and right people leading, we can use that perfect same technology to enhance what we need to know, that we need to feel, how we can actually become better people.
But the people are not there yet. How do we get the people either there, or how can we get the support of the right companies who have the right intentions? How should we go about that?
Yeah, that's something, a question I ask myself every day. I find that hard. I don't think I have all the knowledge there I don't have it sorted out yet. But I did also see that the people that have already succeeded in Silicon Valley, they are not so interested. They have all the money in the world. I see that those tech conferences are more about well-being and how you feel, and meditation and sports and health. So you see, they already know that if you can have all the money in the world and be on the head of a tech company, but if you're extremely depressed, it's terrible. Nobody wants that. So
it's what you're saying is getting them more money. They have to get richer, and where they finally don't care about the money anymore, and then they see the other.
No, I don't see that. I hope that they can be also inspiration, and they are. I think to see to focus on what really matters.
Right. We will continue this conversation a bit later as well, but first I would like to invite Koert van Mensvoort to join our conversation. Like I said, Koert van Mensvoort is an artist and philosopher and known for his work on the philosophical concept of next nature. And next nature revolves around the idea that our technological environment has become so complex that it's best perceived as nature of its own. Here's a short video to introduce him.
We have just arrived. Our planet exists much longer. In the beginning, it was just a lonely rock floating in space. Only after 3 billion years the biosphere evolved. Then came the plants, animals, and another billion years later, people. We have just arrived. And yet, our presence does not go unnoticed. With our limitless ingenuity and technology, we cause the rise of a new sphere on our planet, the technosphere. Just like the biosphere, it wants to grow and survive. We've never planned or invented this, it just happened to us, because we have just arrived. Still, we are not the anti-natural species that merely spoils and destroys nature. Just like the biosphere, the technosphere is full of life. It can connect, nourish, and realize dreams. This is beautiful, this is natural, because evolution goes on.
Hi, you're joining us through Zoom, so a warm welcome to you. Koert, how are you there?
Yes, hello, I'm here. Good to see you. And Lonneke, thank you for your presentation. Always a pleasure to see your wonderful work.
Yeah, I completely agree with that. We will talk about the technosphere a little bit later, but Koert, can you give a short reflection on the presentation that Lonneke gave? Because she said that the human-made mass exceeds biological mass, and that seems as a threat. But if I see that little clip that you showed us, it's not a threat at all. You know, the technosphere can be an addition to the biosphere.
Yes, well, this relates to, I think, everything we do, because typically it's the popular notion in our society is that nature and technology are opposites, are separate, like day and night. And I think we are now at a stage of our human evolution that we start to notice that indeed our technology becomes so all around us, omnipresent, not only in our own lives, but also on a planetary level. That we have to start to perceive it as the next nature. And that means that technology is not opposite to nature, but that it's transforming nature. So this news item, which was also one of the most, I think, striking research from 2020, that indeed human mass now exceeds biomass. Yeah, that's a big deal, because that's this confrontation like, okay, what are we doing here as a humanity? And I also would like to get into the question that Lonneke was asking, like, why do we not react? Because I think I know the answer. I think I know why we do not react.
Relieve us. Tell us what the answer is.
Well, the reason is we as human beings, we are not very good at thinking at a planetary level. We're just not good at it from a biological perspective. And yeah, Lonneke, you already referred to how we evolved on the savannah and how that environment was always ever changing and how we read the environment. And indeed, that's the environment that we as humans evolved in. But that's also an environment where you have a linear view. You see your horizon, but that's it. You see maybe that the climate is changing and that winter is coming, but that's it. You don't see that bigger effect on a planetary level. And I think that's very, very difficult for us as humans to think at a planetary level. And it's also crucial that we start to do that. And maybe I don't want to be too dramatic. I like to be also positive and hopeful. But my hope is that also new technology or perhaps artificial intelligence can even help us to think and steer or even sense at a planetary level.
Right. Because of Game of Thrones, it sounds very ominous. Winter is coming. We know that we have to expect something bad in that sense. But we're caught in this very strange paradox, because what we've done, and what we've done in the Netherlands at least, is controlling nature. There is no wild nature anymore at all. There was a very original forest discovered, and the location was not disclosed because people were afraid that, because of tourism, it would be destroyed. But now we've got this contradiction where nature is completely controlled by humans, but like the biosphere or the technosphere, the technosphere is this wild mass of uncontrollable technology.
Utterly uncontrollable. Yes.
That paradox, how should we solve that paradox? Should we control the technosphere as we did with the biosphere?
Well, no, because that would be very naive, and that doesn't even work. And I think many people now agree that way of thinking of knowledge and then control, and then you are the master of it. That's has been very popular in the previous centuries, but we cannot go with that, because every time that you manipulate something, indeed you gain some control, but also strange new things are happening, and you need to improvise again.
But so if you state that, it sounds like the introduction of this very bad science fiction movie. I have to think of Blade Runner, where we cannot control the technosphere, cannot control technology anymore, and then we're being overruled by technology. Or is that?
No, but we should stop feel the need for control. I don't feel the need to control everything around me, because you also have some otherness around you, which is has a certain autonomy, and it can be in another person, but it can also be in ecology, and you just do not control it, and you should also not desire to control it. You should meet with it. And I think this is also, we're able to do that because we always have to do that. And in that sense, maybe the notion of domestication is more appropriate, in the sense that, yes, we as humans, we domesticated the old nature, so to say. The world around us, the animals, the trees in the forest are exactly the way we want them to be, so we domesticated that. However, our technologies we used to domesticate the old nature, they went out of control, beyond control, up to the level that we say, hey, maybe we should domesticate some of our technologies. So, I think that's much needed now. You already spoke about big tech and how these kind of almost like new kind of organisms, because I see big companies also as organisms in the next nature. They have their own needs, and they have their own metabolism even. And that's not so much about eating fresh fruit or breathing fresh air. It's about materials that go through, money that goes through. And we already discussed shortly the CEOs and their attitude towards it. I think the CEOs, often they're not even in control of their own companies because they're shareholders, so it's this dynamics of its own. And some of the structures that we as humans made went completely out of control. And yes, we have to domesticate them to a certain extent, but we will never be able to control them 100%, and it's also not desirable.
What is the definition of domesticating, and what's exactly the difference between domesticating and control?
Well, I think the word domesticate stems from to make part of your household. And maybe that also already answers your question. So to have part of your living space and within your household. That's the difference between a wild wolf in the forest that's out there, and when they enter your household, well, they eat your chicken and it's a problem. Whereas a dog in your household is domesticated, it's part of your household, and you live together with it, although you cannot control the dog 100%.
But doesn't that contradict what you earlier stated about, controlling winter just on a local scale, on a global scale? When you domesticate, you only involve yourself in the problem within your own household, whereas we should take care and responsibility of the global effects. Yes. So how does that...
I think it's not a contradiction, but it's a good point indeed, that it's an extension that what you can live with in your household on a small scale. Well, basically now, and we in the Netherlands, we've already done it, as you mentioned, because already in the 18th century, the French philosopher Voltaire used to say, God created the world except for the Netherlands, that they have done themselves.
Yeah.
But now the entire planet, to a certain extent, is becoming Dutch, you know, in the sense that there's very little wildness. We have to make all these decisions on what is where, and we also need the politics on a global level, which currently we just don't have, because smaller entities, countries, they are fighting on their own grounds and with their own needs.
Right.
So yeah, there's indeed a whole new world opening up. But once you see it, I must say I'm quite optimistic. I think we can do it. Yes, there are big issues, but if I go back in the past, I cannot find a moment in history where things were better.
Right.
But maybe other people agree or disagree on that.
Lonneke, is there a response that you have to give on the story that you heard by Koert at the moment?
Well, I totally agree that wanting to control everything doesn't exist and is not possible, it's an illusion. But still, it's in everyone's life, also in mine. And I constantly have to remind myself, oh yeah, no, I can't control this, I can't do this. And it's also very frustrating if you see other people who try to control everything in your environment. It really doesn't work. Also, I find it very interesting what you said, that we cannot we are incapable of have a view over the planet on that level. Because we're not supposed to, I think. But we have to now, and that is the difficulty. And we created that we want to see and want to be in touch with the entire world, so now we have to deal with the entire world. We can go everywhere, so we're responsible for everything. And this is a very hard thing, but I do think that technology can help us with that. It's already happening, and I think that is one of the positive things of social media, that you can be connected with communities all over the world, and that you could actually, I've been thinking about this actually also in this time. How can you create a power of people all over the world who want a few simple things the same way? I think we can. I think we're capable of uniting in a way that we can push authorities to fight for some basic levels of controlling the tech, right, or leading the tech in the right direction.
What is interesting in this regard is that we saw, for example, with the Black Lives Matter movement, that there is a possibility to pressure governments in order to gain attention to certain topics like Black Lives Matter. It's not gone. It's not, it's not, the problem has not been solved, but at least it's been put high on the priority list.
Yeah, that was very interesting to see that happening, and very powerful. Yeah.
I'd like to move on to a couple of clips that you brought, some video clips. The first one is important to change our vision on technology as a network. Can you introduce that clip for us and then have a look, or shall we first have a look and then?
No, I can give a very short introduction. It's a part of the TED Talk of Stefano Mancuso. He's one of my favorite scientists. He leads a biology lab in Florence, and he researches plant behavior and how we can actually create robots based on plants instead of animals.
Let's have a look.
Here we have on the left internet, and on the right the root apparatus. They work in the same way. They are a network of small computing machine working in networks. And why they are so similar? Because they evolved for the same reason, to survive predation. It's the same, they work in the same way. So you can remove 90% of the root apparatus and the plants follow to work. You can remove 90% of the internet and it is following to work. So, a suggestion for the people working with networks. Plants are able to give you good suggestions about to evolve networks. And another possibility is a technological possibility. Let's imagine that we can build robots, and robots that are inspired by plants. Until now, the man was inspired just by the man or by the animals in producing a robot. We have the animaloid, and the normal robots inspired by animals, insectoid, and so on. We have the androids that are inspired by by the man, but why we have not any plantoid? Well, if you want to fly, it's good that you look at the bird to be inspired by bird, but if you want to explore soils, or if you want to colonize new territory, the best thing that you can do is to be inspired by plants that are master in doing this.
The plantoid.
Yeah.
Why was it important to show us this clip?
I think we have a very one-dimensional view on the world. Everything is centered around man, and there is still so much. There are so many solutions to be found in the world. I mean, on this earth that has grown slowly over millions of years and evolved in something so particular with so many solutions for things. Everything almost already has a solution, and if you look at all the technology that we create, I didn't see anything that doesn't come, that you also see somehow in nature.
So everything is connected to nature.
Well, that is everything there is. Everything we can think of, every fantasy, every film, everything that looks like complete fantasy is always a combination of elements that we have already seen somehow in our natural environment. So that I believe that is also the case with technology. And I think we can learn so much more and find solutions when you look at all sorts of plants.
Can you give examples?
An example is, for instance, it's maybe an example that is later in this movie. Also, there is a plant that has seeds, and the seeds they fall on the ground, and then they, with the air humidity, they start to twist, and they kind of drill themselves into the earth, and so they can. They basically find themselves a way in. And Stefano Mancuso describes a robot that he developed with his lab that you can plant on Mars. You can basically throw hundreds of robots there. They all go to a place. They change by the air humidity. You don't need to add any energy because plants also don't add that. And they drill themselves in the soil and they connect with each other and they share information. I think that is an example that I think is extraordinary and is a complete different way of thinking that we think right now.
On one way, I can imagine that you're right. On the other hand, how does that help humanity? Because if it, it enables, humanity to colonize the moon. I don't think the moon is going to benefit from that.
No, I agree with that. No, but it was more an example to see how you can, how solutions are maybe already there for problems that we're looking into.
Right.
But I think we have to look much closer to ourselves, and the solutions are much closer.
Yeah.
Than we think.
Yeah. There's a second clip that you brought, and after seeing the second clip, I would like to ask you to respond as well. But can you introduce the second clip to us?
Yeah, this is Simon Sinek. I think I don't pronounce that well. And he talks about the impact of technology on people.
Let's have a look.
We know that engagement with social media and our cell phones releases a chemical called dopamine. That's why when you get a text, it feels good, right? So, we've all had it where you're feeling a little bit down or feeling a bit lonely, and so you send out 10 texts to 10 friends, hi, 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 because it feels good when you get a response, right? Right? It's why we count the likes. It's why we go back 10 times to see if my Instagram is growing slower. Did I do something wrong? Do they not like me anymore? Right? The trauma for young kids to be unfriended, right? Because we know when you get a hit of dopamine, which feels good. It's why we like it. It's why we keep going back to it. Dopamine is the exact same chemical that makes us feel good when we smoke, when we drink, and when we gamble. In other words, it's highly, highly addictive. Right? We have age restrictions on smoking, gambling, and alcohol, and we have no age restrictions on social media and cell phones, which is the equivalent of opening up the liquor cabinet and saying to our teenagers, hey, by the way, this adolescence thing, if it gets you down. But that's basically what's happening. That's basically what's happening, right? That's basically what happened. You have an entire generation that has access to an addictive, numbing chemical called dopamine through social media and cell phones as they're going through the high-stress of adolescence. Why is this important? Almost every alcoholic discovered alcohol when they were teenagers. When we're very, very young, the only approval we need is the approval of our parents. And as we go through adolescence, we make this transition where we now need the approval of our peers. Very frustrating for our parents, very important for us. It allows us to acculturate outside of our immediate families into the broader tribe, right? It's a highly, highly stressful and anxious period of our lives, and we're supposed to learn to rely on our friends. Some people, quite by accident, discover alcohol and numbing effects of dopamine to help them cope with the stresses and anxieties of adolescence. Unfortunately, that becomes hardwired in their brains, and for the rest of their lives, when they suffer significant stress, they will not turn to a person, they will turn to the bottle. Social stress, financial stress, career stress, that's pretty much the primary reasons why an alcoholic drinks, right? What's happening is, because we're allowing unfettered access to these dopamine-producing devices and media, basically it's becoming hardwired, and what we're seeing is as they grow older, too many kids don't know how to form deep, meaningful relationships. Their words, not mine. They will admit that many of their friendships are superficial. They will admit that their friends, that they don't count on their friends, they don't rely on their friends, they have fun with their friends, but they also know that their friends will cancel on them if something better comes along. Deep, meaningful relationships are not there because they never practice the skill set, and worse, they don't have the coping mechanisms to deal with stress. So when significant stress starts to show up in their lives, they're not turning to a person, they're turning to a device, they're turning to social media, they're turning to these things which offer temporary relief.
Well, that's quite a grim scenario. Why did you want to confront us with that grim scenario, Lonneke?
Well, because we are looking for the stimulus that we always looking for, but now they are provided by the devices and they don't actually deliver the benefits from what we're actually looking for. And I think we have to be aware of that and make a choice, because also social media can do great things, but we have to, it shouldn't be just in our lives because it's there. We should choose for it and use it for the right reasons.
And educate young people as well in the usage of social media.
I think we haven't even understood the effects yet completely. We're starting to understand and starting to also to learn that we have to we have a choice in it, but we also have to choose, because we cannot just let this.
It feels that every generation now are like the guinea pigs. In every generation we have to deal with social media, but we're the guinea pigs and we have to still discover what that means. If I could switch to you, Koert, because you were listening, but also nodding in agreement when you heard Simon speak. What did you recognize in the story?
Well, wise words have been said, and indeed we're now test driving this on an entire generation. But earlier we were talking about this domestication, and we need to learn that we think that technology serves us, but we are also serving the technology. So technology is also domesticating us into certain behavior. And this program is called WeMakeThe.City, because I like to extend it beyond the smartphone. Because another news item, which is like not from last year, but from 2007, that since 2007, over half of the world population lives in cities. So that means that humanity is now becoming a city-dwelling species, with or without the smartphone. And in the long run, it becomes natural for humanity to live in this city environment. It becomes part of who we are, just like bees live in a beehive. So that also makes it more important only to make the right decisions now within this generation, because some of the new technologies that arrive in our life now, like the smartphone, they are new at this moment, and we need to have a conversation about it. But at a certain moment, they will be like part of everyday life and become invisible to people because it's the new norm, or even part of our human nature. So the decisions that we make do not only affect the young people today, but also all these generations to come. It's not easy. We have a big task. And
is there anybody that could guide us? Because it's a new area we have to discover, but who can guide us in making the right decisions?
Well, Lonneke should guide us.
I think I completely agree with that.
But to extend on that, No, but she's doing a good job, I think, because to look and learn from things that evolved in the past within nature, the quality of it, billions of years of research and development that evolution has done to bring us solutions, to learn from that. I think that is a good guidance, but it's also unknown territory that we step in. And we talk about teenagers, but in a way you could say humanity is a teenager, you know,
right.
As a whole.
Humanity as a whole is a teenager.
Well, in this world, yeah.
In this position, in this world, because make no mistake, for thousands of years, we were a rather insignificant species on the planet. Yeah. Like gorillas or fireflies, we were there, but we did not have this big impact. And we were also afraid of wild animals that could eat us. And now, because of our ingenuity and technology, we kind of arrived in this setting like, yes, we are changing the entire planet, and it's happening. We cannot go back, but we have to find a path towards the future that is not only desirable for some CEOs or for humanity as a whole, but also for all the other species and the planet at large. Right. It's a big task, but I think if we see ourselves as a teenager and we have to grow up, we have to mature, we have to make better decisions, then we can do it. We have to do it.
It's a great responsibility that we have to take. We've reached the final minutes of this program, so I would like to thank you so much for contributing your ideas and your thoughts. Thank you so much, Koert. And hopefully we'll see each other back again in real life when COVID allows us. Thank you so much for now. Bye-bye. Lonneke, the final minutes and the final words are yours. We look at you for guidance, so that's a good thing that we can focus on now. No, but if we should take the responsibility that we just heard from Koert, what steps should we take in the next couple of years in order to make use of this momentum? I mean, elections are coming up in the Netherlands this March. Is that a moment of creating awareness of the direction that we go to? Or are we heading to the same patterns that we still repeated the past couple of decades and years?
Well, personally, I doubt if politicians still really have an influence on where this world is going, because I think technology is changing us much faster than politics. But politics have to help us in this. I definitely think if what Koert says, if humanity is still growing up and adolescents, we should learn who we are. And now that everything we do is measured, I think the big data of who we really are should be available to everyone. It should not be sold or used to sell us more or to make more profit. I really think we should use this opportunity because it's there to really understand how we behave, because if we understand ourselves, then you can change something. I think, regulations and rules and awareness around the impact of technology, and also in a positive way, should definitely be shared and should be a big part of the direction of our future. And definitely, towards the elections that we're going to be part of the programs.
Right.
Yeah.
I hope indeed that companies will share that information and share the responsibility in order to further us as a humankind.
Right now it's their business model, so it will be hard to get there, but I think we do. We own that material, it's ours.
Yeah.
So.
And we have to use the power and the pressure that we have as a collective in order to get that
Definitely.
happening. Right. Thank you so much for your insights. Thank you so much for your presentation. And again, I would love to continue this conversation later on further as well. So thank you so much for now, and hope to see you next time.
Thank you.
Well, we've come to the end of our program. Thank you so much for watching us. Thank you for watching We Make the City Reset. The next week we will be back with a public philosopher and one of the founders of the School of Life, Roman Krznaric, and his guest will be a philosopher laureate of the Netherlands, Daan Rovers. Next week, same place, same time. Make sure to check the website for other programs, because there are a lot of live casts that are very interesting for you as well. And if you would like to contribute to our programs in these dire times, that is also possible. If you go to the website www.dysfunctional.nl/pay, there you can make a contribution that will benefit the programs directly. Thank you again for watching and hope to see you next week. Bye-bye.